Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
This is Trust Your Dog, a podcast where we almost lobotomize a whale because this week we watched The Beast Below.
Written by Stephen Moffat.
Directed by Andrew Gunn.
And aired on April 10th, 2010.
Would you believe it took me 3 attempts to get that intro right? Because apparently we always lobotomize whales instead of almost. Turns out whales just not allowed to have a brain in this universe.
No. It's,
so that's the biggest twist in
Doctor Who history.
Yeah. of the 21st century. So we just lobotomized all the whales. Anyway, so I guess we'll start with the production information, as we do now, which is going to be a surprisingly much shorter segment than last week because the production of this story is basically Stephen Moffat wrote it and then Andrew Gunn directed it.
Well, we even said last week that most of the production stuff isn't going to be that interesting, really, or even that, long. It's not going to take that long to discuss because a lot of them are just, they wrote the story and they made it maybe with some interesting location stuff, which there was some here. They did some filming at an abbey in Wales and the Queen Elizabeth's room was in it was in a park, and I don't necessarily know too much about this, but I know in the UK they have these like parks set aside. They're kind of like the regional parks here, but a lot of them have big like mansions or I wouldn't call them palaces, but like mansions that like minor royals used to live in or something like that, and now they don't, and they're just parks. I've been to like one of these.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And the BBC just co-opted one to film Liz Ten's bedroom.
I guess.
Apparently, after filming had completed, Moffat was like, no, I want to make some changes to the script. So he went and rewrote like portions of the script. But apparently by that point, Andrew Gunn was busy on some other stuff. So they had to call in Doctor Who veteran Euros Lynn. So I'll give it up for Euros coming in to save the day. Apparently the very first scene shot for this was Winston Churchill's cameo at the end, because Andrew Gunn apparently also directed Victory of the Daleks, and they did that one first before this one, so they filmed that at the end of filming Victory of the Daleks, but at the start of his production.
Yeah, who directed End of the World? Was that Euros Lynn?
You mean The End of Time?
No, not End of the World. Wasn't it called End of the World? One of the Rose. The second story of the Rose.
I don't know, but I guess we'll find out. I actually do think it was Euros Lynn, but, basically any...
Could be anyone, really.
Could be anyone, but pick any name from my hat. And yeah, it was Euros Lynn.
All right. This was a little similar to that. A little.
Not a lot, though. I mean, I don't know. The similarities are slim, I think. Slim.
It's a second story of that Doctor. Focuses a lot on the companion.
That's about as far as the similarities go, except for the fact that Earth is being ravaged by solar flares.
Yeah, but just that in itself is like, that's a kind of a big similarity, I would say.
Yeah, but it's not an obvious similarity unless you're like really trying to pick it out. Because it's not like I sat down and watched this. I was like, man, second story of a Doctor's run that focuses on the companion.
Well, I did, obviously.
Well, obviously, otherwise you wouldn't bring it up on the podcast.
But this starts with Amy, I think, being suspended, out into space. The Doctor extends sort of the air bubble or whatever he calls it, and Amy's
just flying around.
Yeah, she's got her arms stretched out. She's flailing around now. She's pretty.
I think
still.
the Doctor's holding onto her.
He's holding onto her ankle.
Which I don't know how that would work. Just physically, I don't know how the Doctor's staying in the TARDIS. Seeing as we established last week, the TARDIS doesn't really have any of its own gravity, considering the Doctor just fell through the side of the TARDIS when it landed sideways. So, not like the Doctor's being kept inside the TARDIS.
It is what it is, I'm not going to pick it apart too much.
Well, I am. And I am, so... Good old Stephen Moffat. It's our boy. Anyway, eventually a ship goes flying below them, and the Doctor's like, "Hey, look, a
actually,
ship."
It's we totally skipped the pre-credits sequence where the kid
you're right.
messes up in class somehow. We don't really learn what he does, I think. But he's in trouble for some reason, and he has to go below because of that.
Well, so he goes to this little robot, and it's like, good job, dude,
Right,
and good job, George, and good job, Jenny, and then it's like, bad job, Timmy. You get a 0 for the day.
And this is the introduction of the Smilers, which are these robots that have multiple different faces that and their heads spin around depending on their quote-unquote mood,
I guess. Yeah. And then so they go to the elevator with the Vader, it's called. Just the Vader. And the girl is like, hey, Timmy, you're not allowed to ride the Vader with a 0. You'll have to walk to London. And he's like, that's 22 decks. And she's like, yeah, well, you got a 0. So he just waits for the next elevator and he gets in and then he gets sent to the below. The floor just opens. The floor just opens up and he just gets dropped. Surprised he survived the drop. Except the Vader went all the way down to floor 0 before it dropped him. It still looked like a pretty substantial drop.
Yeah, I think they get put into like chutes or whatever, slides, and then the space whale, as we learn it is later, lets the
star whale,
whatever, Terry Nation thing, but lets kids go.
Yeah.
And I'll touch on that a little more later.
Yeah, well, I had Timmy on my death count. They were like, hey, Timmy, you survived. So
I didn't think he was dead.
I did. I mean, it looked like he fell into hell, so...
Yeah, I thought the beast below was going to be, the creature from the Satan pit, like in chains just below, powering this ship.
Well, so the very first shot of the ship, it looks like... the shape of the ship looks like the Millennium Falcon. I'm like, hang on a minute.
Not really. I didn't make that connection.
The very first shot of it kind of looks like it's got a really long point in the middle within like a round back like the Millennium Falcon. I was like, huh, weird. It was just the angle they shot it at, because when you see it at a different angle later, it looks nothing like the...
Yeah.
But it was that very first shot that it looks almost exactly like it, anyway.
Well, it looks pretty cool design-wise. It looks like there's just a massive city just cut out of like the earth and placed onto this ship, which I guess is what it is. And all the buildings have different city names on them.
Yeah, Surrey is on there, which is great because I'm pretty sure I used Surrey in a metaphor on this show once for like no readily apparent reason.
I don't remember why you brought up Surrey, but yeah.
The Surrey sign has one of the R's is like out, so it's just Surrey. Anyway, the doctor's like, hey, look, I found a spaceship. So he like lands the TARDIS on the spaceship.
But he gives Amy this warning first. He's like, don't meddle, don't do anything out of the ordinary, and don't get involved in the affairs of what's going on here. I never do that. That's my one rule. I never get involved, and
I was sitting there like,
I was like, yeah, that's a lie.
That's a lie. This story is weird because it feels like it should have come later in this season. I'm going to talk about that later on, but...
Well, I mean, you're probably saying that because you've already watched the entire season. I didn't think
no, I had the same thought the first time I watched this episode because of how Amy acts in this episode. But anyway.
How she's just okay with all of this, or what?
Well, how she tries to, quote, save the Doctor, unquote, even though, like, really she knows nothing about the Doctor at this point.
Except, like, obsessing over him for...
Yeah, but she doesn't
15 years
really
or so.
know anything about him like this.
But, I mean, that comes near the end. She's a good companion, I guess.
Well, they land...
Let's just touch on the sonic screwdriver for a minute, because right as soon as they land, the Doctor pulls out the sonic screwdriver and starts waving it around. And we keep a sonic screwdriver count, so to speak.
Except I've lost track of it because we have so many things going on that I haven't added them all. And I'm just so overwhelmed by the amount that I have to add to the list still.
Well, okay, but like we've done a pretty bad job keeping up with the death count as well. But regardless, we sort of try and keep track of these things. We keep track of the sonic screwdriver by purpose, and we have sometimes the Doctor will pull it out and we won't know what it's used for. So we have unknown purpose. And in this, it seems like the Doctor just waves it around for an unknown purpose for most of the episode.
That's basically the 11th Doctor's run, so you better brace yourself. Like I said, I think Stephen Moffat is worse than Russell T was ever with the sonic screwdriver.
I mean, I don't really care. It doesn't detract from the episode, honestly. He just does wave it around a lot.
Yeah. The War Doctor brings this up in the 50th anniversary special. The Doctor just pulls out his sonic screwdriver and he's all like, what are you going to do with that? Just assemble a cabinet at them? Like, what's your plan with that? The doctor's like, you know what? I don't really know what I'm doing with this.
Maybe it's like his version of, a fidget spinner or like a pencil that you twirl or like when you twirl your keys around your finger or something.
Fidget spinner.
Because sometimes people just, and not everyone does this, but some people, always just want to have something in their hands to play with.
Yeah, I mean, I twirl my keys around my fingers, so. Where's the doctor with the sonic fidget spinner, though? Fidget Sonic. You have to spin it to make it work.
Yeah, that's what it would be.
The doctor sees this girl crying and he goes outside of the TARDIS and Amy's watching on the scanner and she sees the doctor outside and she's like, what? And he's like, come on, come outside. And so she goes outside and she's like, whoa.
Right.
She spends this entire story in her nightgown, by the way.
The doctor does a lot of strange stuff in this intro scene. He guesses or he uses his surroundings to deduce that this is a police state or something like it. He says all the people are afraid of something that's always present, like a police state. And he takes a glass of water off a table of just people trying to eat somewhere, I guess.
Yeah, and these two people, weirdly
they take
enough,
it in stride,
actually,
they're okay.
Yeah, they take it in stride, but also weirdly enough, both have different glasses for their water.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
It's kind of weird because I thought they're at a restaurant, which you'd think you'd have consistent silverware or glassware.
But you never know.
You never know, I guess.
The doctor puts it on the ground and it's completely still.
Yeah, and he's like, well, that's kind of weird.
Which
and he's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
He's like, well, no, nothing.
Dunno.
Yeah, he's actually I don't know. I think a lot and I don't know. He's then like, well, look. Well, he tells Amy the reason why he figures out it's a police state is because if you watch everybody, there's this girl crying, but nobody's stopping to find out why she's crying, which he says either they know what she's crying about or they don't care, and he says that they probably know what she's crying about and don't want to talk about it.
Right. Also, they notice the smilers in these little cabinets.
Yeah.
And everything else is, filthy. There's trash everywhere and stuff, but these things are pristine. They're spotless. Nobody's even getting close to them.
Yeah, there's not a footprint within 5 feet of them or whatever the doctor says.
Right.
Then the doctor hands Amy this little girl's wallet and he's like, here, tell her she dropped it. And she's like, where'd you get this? I got it after bumping into her 4 times.
Yeah. Which, this is a really smart little girl. She's clued into it. Exactly.
Well, if anybody bumps into you 4 times, I feel like you would figure it out.
Yeah, sure.
And
but there's more to that. Not like this is a great character or anything like this little girl, but still.
Amy's like, hey, you dropped this. And the girl's like, yeah, after your friend bumped into me 4 times.
Well, Amy sort of follows her into this area that is deserted pretty much.
Yeah. And the doctor tells her to ask the little girl why everybody's scared of the Smilers and why nobody's doing anything.
Which she does, and the girl's like, are you stupid?
Then she's like, you sound Scottish. And Amy's like, yeah. Surely Scotland's around here somewhere. And she's like, no, they wanted their own ship. Because the doctor explained at the beginning of this episode that apparently Earth's been ravaged by solar flares and every country was like, we're going to build our own ship and escape Earth. Right.
This is the 29th century or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Scotland has seceded by now. It almost happened a couple of years ago, right? Doesn't it almost happen every couple of years?
Yes. That's how the girl, that's why Amy was like, nothing ever changes.
Right.
But Amy, lock picks. I guess this is a skill she just has, lock picking with a bobby pin, but she lock picks his lock, which apparently they also in the 29th century still use ancient locks from the 15th century. And because there's a quote hole unquote.
It's a padlock basically. So.
Yeah. And nobody knows what's inside these holes because they basically get tented up. So Amy goes inside and she sees a tentacle attack her.
Yeah, it looked cool. It looked good.
Yeah,
the CG work here. I liked it more than in the 11th hour. Maybe because, and I'm thinking that's because things were sort of dark here and the CG itself was also dark to sort of blend in.
Well, I think the CG for the ship looked really good when we got the wide-angle shots of the ship flying by, especially at the end when we pan down below and see the star whale itself.
Yeah, all this looked really good, which was really surprising to me because the 11th hour did not look nearly this good just in terms of the technical aspect of it.
Right.
Which is weird because, you think they'd put all they had into the opener of the season, but yeah.
Nope.
Not that there was, this required more CG. For the whale to work, there needs to be, good CG. And that same thing is true for the, God, I forgot what it was called, the eel thing. and the snowflake guys. I'm forgetting their names.
The Atraxi and Prisoner Zero.
Right. But at the same time, I don't know. I feel like it's more important for the whale. Maybe it's not. I don't know.
I don't know if it's
Maybe I just
necessarily
liked this
more
story
important.
more. Maybe it's just because I liked this story more than the 11th Hour.
Well, it is better. So, Amy then gets captured.
She goes into this like room.
Yeah, she gets captured by these people who take her to this room, and this computer identifies Amy correctly as Amy Pond. She's like 3,000 years old, apparently. And there's like marital status.
Yeah, it's 1306.
Marital status? And she's all at the end of her seat.
Because there's this running tension, and for both the viewer and like Amy's wondering like because did I go back and get married or whatever, but. And you think it's going to be revealed here, like marital status, and you're like, oh boy, here it comes.
Yeah.
But it's like information unavailable.
Yeah. And she's like, oh darn. And then basically this guy pops up and he's like, hello, you're allowed, everybody's allowed to vote.
On the screen, this is
There's 4 screens actually, all showing the same thing. He's like, you're allowed to vote. You're here because you want to know the truth. So I'm going to tell you the truth. And he's like, God save us all.
You have the right to know the truth. But after I show you what I'm going to show you, you're going to have the option to forget it or I forget what the other one was. Protest, right?
And he says,
I'm going to talk about this more later.
He says,
protest
if
dichotomy.
1% protest, then they'll shut everything down basically, and the entire ship will just shut down.
Right. Which that idea is like complicated a little bit later. But I
guess, but also it's like really threatening.
Yeah, it is.
The people into choosing to forget. Anyway, we see a shot of Amy learning all this stuff, and then
there's
she
info
forgets.
Flashes through her mind.
And then the doctor, meanwhile, while this is going on, the doctor meets Liz 10, who
we don't know this is Liz 10 yet. It's just a woman in a red cloak with a mask.
Could well very be River Song until she takes her mask off.
Sure, yeah, I didn't think of that, but sure.
All mysterious and like, oh, I know you, doctor. I know who you are. But then she takes her mask off. It's like, I'm Liz 10, but that's later. She's like, yeah, you've noticed it, right? Because she leaves a glass of water in the engine room, and the doctor's like, yeah, it's weird. There should be like engine vibrations on this ship, but there are none because the water is not moving when I put it on the ground. She's like, yeah, but the ship's still moving.
Right, and there are even, cords and things connected that should, or disconnected that should be connected, and, things don't look right.
Yeah, all the power couplings are disconnected. We forgot to mention there's a fun little cameo appearance by Magpie Electricals when the hole appears. The sign above the sign above the hole says Magpie Electricals, which you'll remember is the electronic company from The Idiot's Lantern.
Yeah. It's a nice little Easter egg there. I didn't notice it.
So I thought that was kind of fun. But yeah, so the Liz 10 gives the doctor a tracker that finds Amy, and then right after Amy forgets, the doctor busts in and is like, Amy, what did you do? Because she sees his message from herself that's like, you need to tell the doctor to get out of here because he can't stay, and if he stays, then things are going to go bad, so get out of here. Right,
and we don't see her recording this message. She forgets that she recorded it as well, but I guess she did that right then and there because there's a big record button in between forget and protest.
That they don't actually mention to you explicitly, they just show it to you, and then they're like, be out.
Yeah.
I don't know why the system allows you to record messages. I don't know why the purpose of that is, especially since it's supposed to just be a voting machine.
Yeah, I was questioning that as well. I mean, and when I thought about it, I was like, all right, the purpose is for this scene to exist, right? This message from Amy to exist.
But I'm thinking in-universe.
Right, in-universe. But then I also was like, did this message really need to exist?
Yeah.
In the story, it's like from a storyline perspective. And I don't know the answer to that. But I think it's no.
Think so.
But I think it's no.
I think it's yes. Because Amy then later on is like trying to figure out why she told herself not to let the doctor stay, and the doctor says
I guess.
The doctor's like, oh, you don't want me to stay because you knew I'd have to make an impossible choice.
But that's with a little reworking, that all could still happen without this message. But it's effective.
And also noticeably, Liz 10's console doesn't have a record button.
Even though she does have a recorded message.
Yeah. Her voting is even more unfair, frankly.
Well, I mean, we're going to talk about this, or I'm going to talk about it, at least this decision between protest and forget. It's really interesting.
But what about the choice between forget and abdicate?
Yeah, that's also really interesting.
So the little girl's like, yeah, everybody gets to vote when they
turn 16.
16, and every 5 years
young.
after that.
Right.
Every 5 years, they have to vote whether or not the ship keeps going or not.
Well, I don't know if they have to, because Liz 10 doesn't, although it might be because she's the queen.
Liz 10 does, but she forgets. It like erases her mind when she forgets. It doesn't just erase the past like vote. It erases the past 10 years. That's what the doctor says.
Yeah, but she doesn't vote like as everyone else does. Like
she's also the queen and made these rules.
Yeah,
so
right. So
not that she knows that.
But I'm also questioning whether like everyone has to vote whether they want to or not.
The way the little girl says it implies that, yeah, they have to vote whether they want to or not. They get taken to vote every 5 years. And also, I guess if they ever just discover the truth. But then the doctor's like, what if we hit the protest button? So they push the protest button, and then it drops them into the belly of the beast. Right. Quite literally the belly of the beast. It's in their mouth.
Right. They go down these chutes, and they're in sort of this... You think it's just a trash... Not heap, but because it's...
You think it's the Death Star.
Yeah, it's...
But, it kind of is... when you think about it, because there's like a tongue moving around. The doc's like, wow, this is a tongue.
Yeah. Well, the doctor looks around, and it's only organic waste. It's only food waste, basically. And then the doctor realizes that they're in a mouth.
And there's a door out, but it's locked with a button that says forget. And the doctor's like, wow, forget or be eaten.
They try and go through the natural exit, but it's closed, and the teeth are huge, and they're barring the exit. And the doctor says, wow, if this is a mouth, I'd love to see the stomach. So that got me thinking, are there any mouths like that are bigger than stomachs? So I looked this up.
What?
Because the way he says it is like, oh, the stomach is huge, right? So it's like, I wonder if any animals have mouths that are bigger than their stomachs. And I didn't look too in depth into this, but pelicans for sure do. Some, if not all, snakes at least do, and some whales. So it's interesting, there's mouths bigger than stomachs.
Such a bizarre thing to look up, honestly. Good on you for actually looking it up, though.
Pelicans, I can understand,
see.
Apparently some snakes have stomachs that are smaller than their eyes, but they can expand.
Yeah, they expand.
It's complicated with snakes, but with pelicans, it's pretty set in stone.
Snakes. Why did it have to be snakes?
Anyway, the doctor uses the sonic screwdriver to make the whale burp. Basically, I think is what it is.
Well, there's some smilers in there, and they're like, what are you going to do? Just frown at us? And then the door opens, and they like stand up and walk out, and the doc's like, well, never mind.
Yeah, this is weird. This is interesting, because the only option you have if you want to leave from the installed exit is forget.
Or be eaten.
I guess. And I guess this is how the kids got out. The whale just...
Well, the whale let them live.
Yeah, let them live.
Because that's what they say about the Doctor and Amy, too. Like, you're the first adults that the whale has spared.
Right, and
God.
Letting them live.
Oh, God.
But yeah, letting them live also just involves pressing the forget button to get out.
There's also, I'll talk about this when we finish the plot, a lot of questions I have about where the society goes after this. But the Doctor and Amy escape, and they meet up with Liz 10, and they're like, why is your name Liz 10? She's like, oh, I know about you, Doctor. And he's like, how do you know about me? And she's all... Oh yeah, Elizabeth II Elizabeth the Virgin Queen. Wow, Doctor, you saucy little guy. And he's like, oh,
right.
Liz 10, you're Elizabeth the 10th. And she's like, yeah, I'm the Queen. Basically, I rule. And I was like,
she takes off the mask, which at some point, and I think it's now, they're like, oh, this is a mask that's perfectly sculpted to your face, but they don't go into more detail about that yet, at least.
Yeah. I was just cringing at the I rule line. And I was like, Stephen.
Liz 10 is cool.
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
She dual wields these blasters and kills some smilers.
Yeah, she kills the two smilers that are chasing them.
And does a cool flip with the gun and stuff. So
they make it to her bedroom, and she's just got a whole bunch of glasses of water on the ground, and the Doctor's like, why? And she's like, to remind myself every day of the impossible truth.
Yeah, this was the most silly part to me.
You don't need
not the eye rule
100 glasses to do this. Just one will do.
She also has a chandelier that looks like it just fell off the ceiling and onto the floor.
She really needs to get a maintenance crew in there.
Maybe she hasn't cleaned in 10 years. Who knows? Anyway, she reveals that she's supposedly 50 and she came to power, or she came to the throne 10 years ago at age 40.
She says they stopped her biological clock, which is why she looks so young still. The Doctor's like, suspicious. Anyway, then basically the
some
monk
guys
orders show up.
So we've seen these guys before. They've been snooping around and doing.
They're the ones who captured
stuff.
Amy.
Right.
And they take the queen. They're like, well, you've shown interest in the engine room, which means now we have to take you to the engine room, the metaphorical engine room. Right. And they go and they basically see these child laborers being trucked out. And they're like, what are those? And they're like, well, the star whale only saves the children.
Well, before she gets taken, I really like this exchange because she says, like, I'm the highest power on this ship. So who's, giving these orders? And they're like, they just accept that. And they're like, just come with us. And then, like, in a few minutes, you're like, oh, okay. So, it all gets put into perspective.
Because they're like, we take orders from the highest authority. She's like, I am the highest authority. And they just kind of nod and say yes.
Yep.
She's like, I don't get it. But then they see another voting console there, and the doctor's already figured it out by this point, actually, because they see this giant brain.
And there's this exposed brain that's getting zapped, constantly. And I forget his name. There's a dude there who's, like, in charge of this operation.
Yeah. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, and he, sort of plot dumps some stuff. The doctor realizes that they're, using the star whale. Just I forget when they dropped that name, but I was like, Terry Nation had a hand in this, didn't he? No. It is a Terry Nation-ism, though, the
it
Star
is.
Whale. But so what they're doing is they captured this whale and used it to get off Earth, and that's why there's no engines; they're just on this whale.
Yeah, and we forgot to mention that when the doctor meets up with Amy in the voting booth, he's like, oh, it won't even register me, won't even let me vote. And she's like, why? You're human, right? And he's like, no, I'm not human. She's like, what? You look human? He's like, no, you look Time Lord. It's like, we came first anyway. And she's like, so there are more Time Lords. He's like, nope, I'm the last one. Bit complicated. Had a bad day. He seems a lot more flippant about it than the 10th Doctor was.
Right, the 11th Doctor is sort of dismissive about it here. But, I think he just wants to... I don't know how much this new era is going to touch on the Time War, or if that's sort of done. But seems like the 11th Doctor wants the 10th and 9th Doctor also just wanted to leave that sort of behind and forget about it. But it seems like the 11th Doctor also wants to do so in a different way.
Wants to forget it more than the other two.
Yeah,
which they play up a lot in the 50th anniversary special because there's like strife between because the War Doctor is the one who ends the war, and there's the 10th Doctor and the 11th Doctor, and the War Doctor asks the 10th Doctor how many children died, and he lists off the number, and the 11th Doctor doesn't reply, and the 10th Doctor's like, you forgot? And he's like, I wanted to, or something like that.
Well, we'll get there in like 9 months, something like that.
Couple months. So, the Star Whale is also the last of its kind. Nice little obvious parallel.
This is like, it was nice, but it's overdone.
Writing 101. Writing for dummies.
It's done okay here, right? Where they're discussing what the Star Whale is, right? It's the last of its kind, and it also became kind because of that. And you're like, as they explain that, you see the Doctor, you're just standing there in the corner, like rubbing the back of his neck, like,
Well, so.
But then later on, Amy's like, just like you, Doctor, the last of its kind.
That's why I'm like, this should have come later in the season because Amy is like really sure that the Doctor's a kind man because all she's seen the Doctor do is save Earth once, and like he could have been doing it for his own ulterior motive. She doesn't know anything.
Yeah, but she really trusts him at this point
for some reason.
But I kind of I'm okay with that, or I'd even say I like it because just after these basically 4 or even you could say 3. Encounters with the Doctor, Amy's already on board with him. She can tell that he is what he is.
He is what he is. Well, we don't know what the 11th Doctor is. That's the thing, too, is that he just regenerated, so...
Well, when he's about to lobotomize the whale, we forgot to mention... He'd have to give himself a new name.
Before he does that, we find out that Liz 10 has her own voting booth, and like I said, the Doctor's figured it out. He says that she's actually 500 years old, or 300 years old, and she's been doing this every 10 years. She eventually figures her way back to the engine room and makes it here to make a vote. And then we see a message from Liz 10 is like, look, here's the dealio. We have a star whale. We basically had no propulsion. We were going to get wiped out by the sun, but this whale came like a miracle, so we hooked it up to our ship. Now you have a choice. Either you can forget this and then try figure it out again, or you can abdicate your throne. If you abdicate, you'll release the star whale and let it go free. But if you forget, we keep it and we keep going. That's the choice you have, Liz.
Yeah, bit of Matrix Reloaded here.
Great.
It is. That's what this whole thing is, right? This is the end of Matrix Reloaded.
When Neo has to... Was it Neo?
Yeah, he has to make the choice whether to restart the Matrix, and this has happened a million times already.
Yeah. Restart the Matrix and kill everyone...
Or let Zion die. Let Zion... Or I forget what the choice is.
It was restart the Matrix
and restart Zion. Or something. I don't remember. I don't
and then
really
the
care.
other choice was like, don't restart the Matrix, but Zion will die.
But then he saves... I forget what he did. He like saves Trinity. He's like, I choose secret option C, and he saves Trinity instead. I don't remember.
He busts out and goes to save Trinity because she takes a bullet to the stomach, and then secret option C turns out to be letting Agent Smith take over the Matrix.
I also did look, now that you mentioned stomachs again, I did look this up. Human stomachs are bigger than mouths, which is what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure.
Great. So, yeah, the doctor decides to go lobotomize the whale because he's like, yeah, you tried to keep me away from here, Amy, because you knew that I was going to have this impossible choice where I had to choose all these humans or the star whale, and it's going to lobotomize the whale, and then he won't feel anything.
Amy and Liz are both like, no, don't do it. And the doctor's like, I have 3 options. And I was like, the Time Lord gave him 3 options. From Genesis of the Daleks.
And only death, only murder is left.
No, it was genocide.
I mean, it is genocide since he's the last of his race.
Yeah, true. But
the moment murder becomes genocide.
But, whoa. But the 11th Doctor here says that the 3 options are, let everyone die.
Because, yeah, if he lets the star whale go, everyone will die. Because the ship will shut down.
Or he can kill the whale, basically, or
vegetate
the whale.
Yes, option C is vegetate the whale so that they both survive, but the whale won't feel it anymore.
Right.
And then Amy... There's a scene where she like flashes back to the doctor being like, you gotta notice everything, like make sure you're paying attention to everything. And we see this flashback of a whole bunch of stuff she noticed because there's a tentacle that like just kind of taps the kid on the shoulder, and she makes this wild assumption.
Well, this tentacle comes out, and you think it's going to attack the little girl, and the kid from the beginning is also here.
Right.
Some more kids are here as well. You think it's going to attack them, but it doesn't. It sort of just looks at them, really. I guess the whale can... I don't know. Can the whale see out of the tentacles, or can feel, or knows where they are? But like, yeah, it's interesting. It doesn't attack them. And Amy goes like, wait a minute. She connects all these dots. She remembers that Liz 10 said the children were dying, and the whale came like a miracle, and then it lets the kids go, and here it doesn't attack the children, and
but it'll eat the adults.
Right, it will eat the adults.
But anyway, apparently she makes this big leap that this means that the whale is actually friendly, and if she just lets the whale go, it won't just bail on them right then. Especially since really
also technically we don't know what the whale freaking does. Like after, I mean, it could just like fly into a sun or something. So been tortured for hundreds of years.
I have a lot of things to say about that. We're gonna get there in just a moment.
Okay, but like in like what this story is trying to do itself, that's not the case, right? But like in terms of like, do we really actually know? No, we don't.
I mean, but this is the thing. Amy doesn't know that the whale's not just going to be like, you tortured me for freaking 300 years. Like, yeah, I wanted to help 300 years ago, and you just freaking captured me and tortured me and just ditches right there.
I mean, hey, it could save all the children and kill all the adults. We don't know what it would do.
Back to Lord of the Flies this. Like, let's find out if the children can make a better society than the adults. But she forces Liz 10 to push the abdicate button, and Liz 10's like, wow, this does mean that Liz 10's not the queen anymore, though, technically, because the whale does get released.
Yeah, Amy ends the British royal line, I guess.
Apparently, House of Parliament just doesn't exist anymore. Oh, and apparently the control room for this beast is in the Tower of London.
Yeah, right.
The new Tower of London.
Yeah, this set actually... Well, it's not a set. It was on location in an abbey in Wales. That's what I found out.
That makes sense. It looks like it. It looked kind of like an old church, converted, roughly. Because the only conversion they did was put a hole in the floor and add Liz 10's console. And then they speed up. The guy's like, wow, we're speeding up. And Amy's like, yeah, well, you stopped torturing the pilot.
Yeah.
The doctor's just kind of like, wow, you could have killed everyone, Amy. And she's like, yeah, but I didn't.
I'm sure people die because of this, because we see shots of like what looks like the equivalent of a massive earthquake. I'm sure people were injured in this, the whale sort of breaking free and all that.
This surprisingly reminds me a lot of WALL-E. I don't know if you've ever watched WALL-E.
Yeah, I have, but I don't remember anything about it.
But in WALL-E, the Earth gets so polluted they pile onto these ships and they fly away. And they keep sending these probes back to Earth to find out if plant life is supportable on Earth again or not. And this one probe comes back positive, and then you find out like the ship has this secret directive to never go back to Earth. And the captain's like, no, but we got to go back to Earth. And the ship's like, if you go back to Earth, you're going to kill everyone on the ship. The captain's like, yeah, I'm not taking that chance. It reminded me, just this reminded me a lot of that for some reason.
Sure.
I think just making a choice that would kill everyone on your generation ship that would literally wipe out the human race, but you're making the choice anyway against higher authority. Although in this case, the higher authority would be her past self. So.
But it all works out in the end. I mean, unless the whale goes and flies into a sun, like we said.
Well, they go to this observation deck, and the doctor's like, you could have killed everyone, Amy. And she's like, yeah, but I didn't. He's like, yeah, but you could have. She's like, well, I mean, I knew the star whale was kind. He's the last of his kind, and like, look at you. And he's like,
yeah, this is the thing. Amy she knows she can tell like who the doctor is right off the bat. She can tell that the whale is kind right off the bat, like the doctor. Mm-hmm. Here's where they really play it up, though. And
but can she really tell the doctor's kind? Because, like I said, what if he just saved Earth because he wants to like conquer it later? She doesn't know.
I know. Well, like, yeah, logically she doesn't know, or like, in terms of like the raw evidence she has, she hasn't really interacted with the doctor all that much. She doesn't know, but like, I don't know. I feel like inside there's something telling her like, yeah, this is a
she's just
quote
starstruck.
unquote good person.
She's just starstruck and potentially / definitely in love with him. The little girl's like, oh, you're traveling with your boyfriend?
That's where this is freaking going, obviously. But
because the girl's like, oh, you're traveling with your boyfriend, and Amy kind of just goes, huh.
Well, yeah, and I think in that moment she remembers like, oh yeah, I ditched my wedding to come do this.
And when they're going back to the TARDIS, he's like, well, big data mine. She's like, wait, what? And he's like, that's always big data mine. I'm like, yeah, all right. You knew what you were doing, Doctor. You know what you were doing when you said that.
Well, did he know? I don't know, because does he know that her wedding's tomorrow? When he
seems to know freaking everything.
I don't know. Well, in this moment, I didn't know. But the doctor also, in that scene, says that he skips all the boring days. And I was like, well, do you skip all the boring days, or does the show skip all the boring days? Because, you know, we just went back and rewatched Unearthly Child, right? The Doctor and Susan were on Earth for a couple months prior to that story, and that was all skipped.
Yeah, what was the Doctor doing? Like,
yeah, well, we know what Susan was doing, right? She was in school, but what was the Doctor doing at that time? I'm sure there's some expanded universe thing that tells you, but
swimming in the TARDIS swimming pool in that Edwardian swim gear we see in, what was it, the Space Museum, I think?
I don't remember what it was. Yeah, I think it was a Space Museum.
Anyway,
I forgot that his story even existed.
Hey, that was one of the better ones. One of the better, not great, better. Anyway, the phone in the TARDIS rings for what I think is the first time. The actual TARDIS phone and not the cell phone the Doctor has.
I don't remember, actually.
Maybe not.
I don't know.
But they pick up the phone and Amy's like, it's the Prime Minister. And he's like, oh, cool, which one? She's like, the English one. He's like, but which English one, Amy? She's like, oh, it's Winston Churchill. And he's like, oh, give me the phone.
The most famous one.
He's like, oh, Winston, what's up, my dude? What is going on? He's like, I have a problem. You see the silhouette of a Dalek on the wall.
Right. I liked this. I liked this sort of lead into the next episode, this cliffhanger, especially because it's the Daleks.
Well, also, they're not really keeping the Daleks secret next week, considering the name of the episode is Victory of the Daleks.
And the preview also does give you a little more information. They're not being attacked by the Daleks. According to what's in the preview, someone has supposedly developed a Dalek. We'll see where that goes next week.
It's Power of the Daleks. It's literally Power of the Daleks. Like, I'm telling you straight up, when we watched Power of the Daleks originally, I had just watched Victory of the Daleks, and I remember watching Power of the Daleks and being like, wow, I've already watched this, like, 40 years from now, 50 years from now. I think next week is also the episode that introduces the, quote, new Dalek paradigm, unquote, which flopped so spectacularly we never hear about it again.
Well, I have no idea what that is, so I guess I'll find out. I know there are a bunch of multicolored Daleks in the next story.
That's it. That's the new Dalek paradigm that flops so spectacularly we'd never see them again.
Why is that a paradigm, though? Like, why
That's
is
what they
it
call
called
it.
that?
I don't know. That's just what they call it in the episode. The Daleks are like, this is the birth of the new Dalek paradigm. So don't look at me.
I mean, I can see why people. I don't know what I'll have to see next week's story to really give my opinion on that, and not just this preview. But I can see why people dislike having those, having pastel colored Daleks, right? Because their design has always been, the metallic, the silver, and then there usually be like one golden one or a black one, or, the Dalek.
Well, the reboot ones have all been bronze colored.
Yeah, but they still have that metallic silvery look.
Yeah.
So I can see why people wouldn't necessarily take to that.
I think they just also didn't just jive with the design, because the design is also, there's like design differences beyond the color that's also different.
Sure. Well, we'll have to see next week. Getting a little bit ahead of ourselves here.
Anyway, in regards to this week, I have some things to say about the story. I want to talk about the fact that where the hell does this society go from here? There's no queen.
They fly into a sun.
There's no queen. They technically don't have any way to control the star whale anymore, because they were basically using the
whale to get to another planet that could sustain them, but now the whale is supposedly, like we said, going to take them to a planet that can sustain them.
Yeah, the whale has its own free will now.
It's free whale.
And there's no real way to control where he's going.
Wait, this is just Free Willy and Spin. No, it's not, but.
And, I have a lot of questions about this.
They probably, if we're going to like pick this apart and stuff, they probably just reinstate Liz 10.
I guess, but she doesn't have any power anymore, so like.
But they probably just reinstate all her power as well.
No, she's like, just kidding, Liz. That abdicate button wasn't really an abdicate button. It was just a release the star whale button, but we put abdicate on it to spook you.
Or you put abdicate on it.
You printed abdicate.
She was the one who started all of this, really.
I don't know. And like I said, I feel like the story should have come later in the season, because Amy makes a lot of big jumps about who the Doctor is as a character, because she tries to stop him from even making this choice. But, I mean, it's like, who does she think she is that she has this? And the Doctor says this. He's like, why did you think that you could take that away from me? Like, who do you think you are? But
again, I actually really like this, because right off the bat, Amy just instinctively knows. She knows it about the whale, and she knows it about the Doctor, that, like, this is the word she uses, kind.
I mean, yes, but why does that drive Amy to try stop the Doctor from making this choice? Like, why does she feel like she is the one who can take this choice away from the Doctor? That's what bothers me the most about this. That's why I feel like this should have come later in the season, when she knows him more, because she barely knows him at this point, and yet she's just so egotistical almost to just say, I'm taking this choice straight away from you, Doctor.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think she knows, or at least thinks she knows what's going to happen, and that the Doctor's making the wrong choice. And it worked out okay. That could have fell flat on his face for her.
Just release the whale and it just flies away, and it's like, whoops.
Just shakes off the entire city and
kills everyone, and she's just like, whoops.
But it works out. It works out.
I mean, yeah, really by sheer blind luck, if you really get into the nitty-gritty of this.
Sure, but like in the like what the story, like the rhetoric of this story, like that it kind of has to work at the end with like Amy and stuff. So I was okay with it. This wasn't like the best story in the world, right? But I liked how it all ended up, really. One thing I want to talk about is how the 11th Doctor so far seems almost 7th Doctor-ish in the way he'll sort of get people to do what he wants. And now I'm forgetting the exact situation. It's something near the beginning of the episode where he sort of, and this is actually kind of foreshadowing now that I look back on it, he gives Amy this choice, but it's not really a choice for her.
Mm-hmm. He tells her, it's when they're
sitting on the bench.
He gives her the wallet and he says, either you could take this wallet and go ask her about all the stuff, or I could take you home right now back to Leadsworth or whatever the heck her village in the middle of nowhere is called.
Yep. So this sort of reminded me almost of the 7th Doctor, tricking Ace and sort of leading her along. And I forget what the 7th Doctor did.
Well, there was that time Ghostlight when they showed up at the house and the Doctor pretended like he didn't know what the house was. And then Ace figures it out and he's like, oh, that's this house? Whoa, I had no idea.
There was that time in Curse of Fenric where he revealed he'd been manipulating literally everything that'd been going on in the story from behind the scenes for years, and that time in Silver Nemesis where he did almost the same thing and pretended he forgot about it.
Wow, I did that? I had no idea, Ace. And Ace is like, right, yeah, I believe you. Yeah, that relationship was really toxic when you think about it.
We'll see where the 11th Doctor goes from here.
Yeah.
But I also want to talk about this decision that people can make when they quote unquote vote, right? Which is between protest and
forget.
So
it's not really a choice.
Well, it's weird because in this moment, when they choose between protest and forget, when you think of people protesting, that's like that's a choice that you make. That's an active thing that you go out and do. You go and say, okay, I'm going to go out and protest something, right? And this like choice, well, the way it frames forgetting as like the opposite to protesting. It frames forgetting and ignoring as like an action, as like what did I write? Something you actively do, right? The opposite of protesting. So almost as if by forgetting, by ignoring, by not protesting, you support the side you don't protest against.
Yeah.
Right? So like...
I mean, I agree with that, frankly.
Yeah, it's interesting that this, I don't know or care whether I agree with it or not, and maybe that's related to what this story is actually setting up, not caring, just the idea of not caring, but it was interesting how they sort of frame this, like, no action as, like, supporting a certain side.
Well, that was the whole thing during the, like, 2016 presidential election, this, like, oh, if you're not actively voting...
if you're not for someone,
if you're not for Hillary, you're for Donald Trump, right? It's like if you're not helping,
it's like that saying, right? If you're not with me, you're against me. You can't. There's no like third option.
It's also like that song by, I think it's by Rush. It's like but one of the lyrics is like if you decide not to choose, you've still made a choice.
Sure, which is actually related to the Matrix thing we were talking about before.
Like, I mean, I feel like the entire plot of the story is setting up this idea that you don't really have choices, right? You have the choice between protesting and forgetting, but the guy's like, if 1% of you protest, then we'll all die. And then even if you protest, you get dropped into the beast, and then it's like, if you still don't forget, you'll just get eaten by the beast right here.
Sure.
Or when Liz 10 has her choice, so everybody in the story has a choice. It's not really a choice, because then Liz 10 is like, she can forget and they'll just keep going, but they keep torturing this beast, or she can release the beast, but in order to do so, she not only has to abdicate, but probably kill everyone on the ship. She has to choose between saving the one star whale or saving everyone on the ship. And the Doctor has the same choice. He either saves the star whale or he saves everybody on the ship, which once again isn't a choice. Amy also gets a choice that's not a choice. Either she goes and talks with this little girl, or the Doctor just takes her back to Ladesworth and drops her off and never talks to her again, right? Everybody in this story is faced with a choice that's really just not a choice. The choice has already been made for them, and we already know what they're going to choose. I mean, you think Amy is going to choose protest because she's the companion. You're like, oh man, that's where the story's going to go. She's going to protest, but she hits the forget button, because if she protests, everybody might die. Because that's also the other thing. You don't know how many people have protested. The guy's like, if 1% of you protest, you'll all die, but you don't know. It's the paradox of choice, right? It's another paradox where... There's
some free will / determinism stuff going on here, too. So
yeah, a lot of free willy stuff.
Oh, God. Wow. That is actually an awesome pun, but anyway. You know Free Willy, the movie, right? Yeah, with the whale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and the where it's like you don't know how many people have voted to protest, and you don't know if you're going to be the one vote who pushes it over the 1% or not. But even if you don't want to take that chance that you could be the one vote who pushes you over the 1%, right?
Right. There's also, there's the line from the Doctor too, when right before he presses the protest button, Amy's like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm taking down the government, right? Framing protest as this thing that can actually work, can actually do things, because people always discuss this, right? There are people always protest, and there's always people who come out and say like, well, you're not really doing any, like, this doesn't really change anything, just protesting. And I'm not going to comment on whether that's true or not, because hey, I freaking don't know. But it also, the right opposite this is forget. So it sort of frames, forgetting, like you're supporting this other side at the same time. So I just thought it was interesting, cool stuff.
It throws back to Thomas Paine and Thomas Jefferson, who were like, beginning of early days.
T-Paine.
Big T-Paine.
The gasworks guy from, what was that story called? I forget what it's called. The some Cyberman one with the 10th Doctor.
Age of Steel, Rise of the Cybermen?
No, it was the...
Doomsday.
The one with the fake doctor. The
Next Doctor.
Yeah.
It's called The Next Doctor.
Yeah, The Next Doctor.
And they were all like, if the government is unjust, then it's a citizen's duty, not their right, their duty to rise up and revolt and overthrow it. That's kind of how it's framed here. If the government's unjust, you hit that that's what the Doctor's saying anyway, you hit that protest button, you overthrow the government. Like, if it's unjust, you have to overthrow it.
And then you get thrown into the belly of the whale and you have to forget. So
unless you want to be eaten.
That's actually a saying, isn't it? The belly of the whale. Huh?
The belly of the beast, yeah. A lot of interesting stuff here about choice.
Yeah.
And free will and determinism.
Yeah, would be a good episode to go back and rewatch, knowing what happens at the end. Not that I'm going to do that, but hey. Maybe one day. Maybe one day I'll actually go back and rewatch Pyramids of Mars. Maybe one day.
That's what's also interesting is that there is one character in the story who is given a choice that isn't really a choice, but makes the opposite choice. Is the little boy at the beginning who's told you can't ride the Vader with a 0 or you will be dropped below. And he still chooses to do it anyway, when really the logical choice would be to walk the 22 decks because you don't want to be dropped into God knows what, right? You're probably going to die if you do that, but he still chooses to get in the elevator and do it anyway.
Yeah, he survives too.
And, whatever that's saying about children having more free will than adults, or children just being more apt to make choices that seem dangerous, I don't really know. But I think it's interesting that the only character in the story who makes the opposite choice of what's expected is the kid at the beginning.
Sure.
Especially when he gets spooked by that creepy monk dude in the Vader. He's like, don't you do it.
Yeah.
Also, the Smilers have 3 heads. I don't know if you noticed this.
Right, yeah, I wasn't going to actually touch on this because it's kind of related to just stuff that I think is going to happen later on, but since you bring it up, why not? The Smilers have 3 different faces, although it looks like when their heads spin around, it's just one side or the other, right? So first I was like, all right, is there someone behind them, like, switching out the faces? And maybe this could I was also thinking that this could just be me, right? To me, it looked like they were turning around, 180. Mm-hmm. Although maybe I was just, not seeing things correctly. Although this is, based on what Stephen Moffat has written before, this is like, and I'm going to directly compare him to Russell T, because Russell T wrote like the majority of the stories in his era, and he was the previous showrunner, so I'm just going to directly compare them. He's a more thematic writer than Russell T. He'll throw in things that like don't necessarily make real world sense, and don't necessarily even make sense within like the logic of the plot of the story, but he'll throw in things that like work sort of thematically, which is interesting. And that's it's a personal preference as to whether you like that or not. I'm okay with it, and I tend to prefer it actually. But it's something I've noticed he does, and I think as we continue to watch and as supposedly the stories get more and more complicated, I think we'll see that more.
Oh yeah, definitely. The last shot of this episode before we end here is a shot of a crack appearing.
Right, forgot about that.
In the side of the ship, a crack that looks exactly like the one in Amy's bedroom.
Right, they're not being as subtle as they were with this overarching thing as they were, ever really. This is the least subtle they've been about it, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. And that's something you'll notice about Stephen Moffat quite a bit.
Well, it's pretty obvious so far, considering how over the top a lot of the stuff in this one and the 11th Hour were. But I'm okay with that. Like,
I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that's what you're
that's what it is.
Bracing yourself. It is what it is.
Well, that's all I got for this one.
Yep, me too. You can email us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, ingredients, love letters, your thoughts on the beast below. You can find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Google Play at Trust Your Doctor. Be sure to leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us on Twitter at TYD Podcast. and follow us on Twitter. And next week we're watching Victory of the Daleks. But until then, the end.